Hi, everybody. Movie Man Eric Houston here with a special presentation. This is one of my favorite classes, an older class that I wanted to pull out of the archives to share with you today. This one's a look at the life and career of Lucille Ball. I hope you enjoy it. So Lucy Desiree Ball was born August the 6th, 1911 in Jamestown, New York. Her parents were Henry and Dee Dee Ball. When she was young, Lucy's family moved around a lot because her father was a lineman. And at age 4, unfortunately, her father died of typhoid fever. At the time, Dee Dee was already pregnant with her second child, a boy named Frederick. Dee Dee, Frederick, and Lucy moved then to Celeron, New York to live with Dee Dee's parents. And a young Lucille loved to spend time at nearby Celeron Park, an amusement park, where there were rides, dancing, a lake, and vaudeville. In time, Dee Dee married Edward Peterson, a Shriner who encouraged a 12-year-old Lucille to audition for the chorus line in a Shriner's show. From that moment on, Lucy was hooked. When she got a little older, she moved to Hollywood and began appearing in a number of small roles in the 1930s for RKO Studios, including appearing alongside both the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers.
You, Gordon, and I gave him a copy of Hail and Farewell, which he's reading this very minute.
Too bad you made the appointment up here. I don't know what to do. If I stay, I may lose the cast.
If you don't, you'll lose your backer.
But you must be here when he comes. That may be Mr. Jenkins now.
Man the pumps, boys.
What are you studying at college?
Pig Latin. Atwe aye uye uinde unite. You wouldn't know a thing about that, would you?
Oh, nay.
Lucy also appeared in 3 Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers films, including Roberta. She played the flower girl in Top Hat, and she appeared in Follow the Fleet. It helped, too, to get her these roles that she was actually a distant cousin of Ginger Rogers's. Lucy auditioned for the role of Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, but of course didn't get it, and appeared in a number of other lower budget movies, earning her the nickname around Hollywood, Queen of the Bees. She appeared in 65 B movies throughout the 1930s. In some of these, she even early on showed a flair for comedy that unfortunately producers rarely recognized. But when they did, it led to cinematic gold, like in this opening scene from the movie, Miss Grant Takes Richmond. Like a lot of actors of her day, Lucy began to appear on the radio to make some additional money and gain exposure, and appeared on several radio shows. In 1948, she hit it big on the radio as the dizzy wife on a show called My Favorite Husband. Lucy found she adored performing for the live audience, which she'd never been able to do with the movies. The show was so successful that CBS wanted to turn it into a TV show. Lucy agreed, but only if they agreed to cast her real-life husband of 8 years, Desi Arnaz. The two met as co-stars on the set of a movie called Too Many Girls. Desi had been born in Santiago, Cuba on March the 2nd, 1917, to a very wealthy family. Desi's father was Santiago's youngest mayor and served in the Cuban House of Representatives. But his father was imprisoned after the Cuban Revolution of 1933, and the family's money and property were seized. Desi and his family fled to Miami the following year, and Desi turned to entertainment to support himself, appearing on Broadway and playing guitar for Xavier Cugat. He began appearing in movies, like the 1943 Robert Taylor film, Bataan.
Hold still. Coming down to this for days, haven't you?
No, sir, Sarge. Well, I had the shivers.
First the shivers, then the shakes. Hot and then cold and then hot again. I've had malaria myself. I know how it goes.
But I ain't sick.
How'd he take charge of him?
But I ain't sick, Sergeant.
You just need a little rest.
Some double shots of quinine.
Epps, Malloy, take care of your take-back. You other guys get on your guns, keep your eyes open.
Desi married Lucy after a 5-month whirlwind romance, and he began immediately touring the country with his band. But the time apart put a strain on their marriage, as did Desi's chronic drinking and incessant womanizing. Lucy hoped that by working together on this new television show, that would solve all of their problems and save their marriage. But CBS was concerned that American audiences wouldn't believe that Lucy was married to a Cuban band leader. To prove their point, Lucy and Desi began touring a vaudeville-style show to prove the concept. Initially, the show would have seen Lucy playing a successful actress opposite Desi's band leader, but while on the road, they soon realized that the housewife angle would be more relatable and funnier. The tour was a big success, and CBS ultimately relented, allowing Lucy to cast Desi as her on-air husband, and to change the name of the show from My Favorite Husband to I Love Lucy. The first episode debuted on October the 15th, 1951, with one of the skits where Lucy poses as a clown to get in the show, having come from the vaudeville show. They performed this many times on the road and decided to use it as the centerpiece for the first episode of I Love Lucy.
Professor.
Gracias.
Gracias to you, too.
The pair formed the company Desilu, initially to produce the vaudeville show and now to produce the TV show, with the name of the company coming, of course, from their names, Desi and Lucy. The company was run by Desi and Lucy personally, which was very unusual for the time. It was not unusual for a star to have their own production company, but they virtually never ran them themselves. And that wasn't all that was unusual. You see, the sitcom itself was a new concept. There weren't very many on television, and the ones that were not very popular. They were mostly adapted from popular radio shows, and they didn't tend to work very well on the fledgling medium of television. You see, at the time, Most television shows were broadcast live from New York, when kinescopes, recordings made by pointing a film camera at a working TV showing the live image, were used for West Coast airings and reruns. You've likely seen kinescopes on TV as reruns for some old TV shows. They always have sort of a weird blurry image from the way in which they were made, and people didn't really enjoy watching kinescopes even then. A good example of the kind of sitcom, which again was being produced live to television at the time, was a show called The Aldrich Family, which was a teenager sitcom, sort of like Dobie Gillis.
Breakfast.
Oh, doggone.
Mother, could you pin this last one on, please?
Oh, my goodness. Turn around, Mary.
Do you like it, Father?
Do I what?
Sam, stop eating long enough to tell her you like it.
Oh.
It's for Ricky Peterson's costume party. I represent a song.
A song? Well, let's have some butter.
Father, can't you guess what song I am?
You're
These are real flowers pinned on me.
You're my pin-up girl?
No, Father.
Let's have some butter.
Sam, can't you guess?
I can't have any butter until I do.
Father, I'm June is busting out all over.
Oh, splendid. Now then, how about it?
Lucy and Desi were very displeased by the nature of television sitcoms at the time, and they really wanted to revolutionize things with I Love Lucy, and they did this in a number of ways. Now, like a lot of early television programs, not just The Aldrich Family, but game shows like To Tell the Truth or I've Got a Secret, I Love Lucy would be filmed with multiple cameras. But unlike those shows, which again were broadcast live, I Love Lucy would film with 3 film cameras. This would allow for better quality, like a movie, for both coasts and reruns, so that they would only ever be showing that original piece of film as opposed to making a kinescope of the production. So again, much, much higher quality. That's part of the reason why Lucy reruns are still so prevalent today when other shows of the same era are not, because they look good, because they were shot on film rather than a kinescope, so that they still look like high quality film images. Filming in this way also meant that they could film in California rather than in New York. New York had all of the live TV equipment and setup. California had all of the Hollywood studios. So in essence, they were shooting I Love Lucy like a Hollywood movie. It allowed them to stay at their home in California rather than move. And among other things, that allowed them to attract much bigger guest stars who lived in Los Angeles and didn't want to make the trip to New York. Now, you might be wondering, why weren't other TV shows doing this? Why weren't they filming on film as well? Well, TV producers had long resisted using film because it was really expensive. Film is by no means cheap, and by using that sort of intermediary step, it would cost all sorts of money, not just for the film stock, but for editing and all kinds of other things. And CBS was very resistant to shooting I Love Lucy this way. At this point, Desi then made one of the shrewdest deals in TV history. He was so committed to shooting on film that he offered to bear the cost of the film himself. And in exchange, he wanted ownership of the prints and the negatives, realizing that Desilu would then reap the benefits of any future reruns. Now, TV was still new. Reruns were sort of unthinkable, so CBS didn't hesitate to make the deal and essentially give Lucy and Desi the keys to the kingdom. I Love Lucy would, of course, go on to be extremely successful and would rerun for decades. And Lucy and Desi would personally reap all the benefits, a thing which very few other TV stars ever enjoyed. Lucy and Desi were also disturbed by the lack of laughter on TV sitcoms and wanted that energy from the audience. Now, game shows and some comedies, like the Jack Benny program, still had live audiences, but to make that work, they had to essentially shoot in a theater, right? In an actual theater that had the seating and everything for everybody to sit in, essentially creating filmed stage shows rather than a television show in the style of I Love Lucy.
Oh, sure, I won't mind that at all.
Mister?
Yeah?
That's you. That one.
Yes?
Hey, you got out of my cab in such a hurry you forgot your briefcase.
Oh, how stupid of me. Thank you very much. See, I have some very, very important papers in there. Thanks a great deal, and Here's a little something for your trouble.
Gee, a $5 bill. Oh, thanks a lot.
Well, you're certainly welcome.
Don, $5? Well, I mean, I can appreciate your being grateful and everything, but $5?
Jack, there's nothing so strange about that. I once saw you give a man $5.
Well, I know, but he was a lifeguard. He saved me from drowning. Yeah, I'll never forget how he dickered the third time that I was going down. Doc, what we carried on, really.
Hey, wait a minute. Ain't you Jack Benny?
Yes.
How do you like that? Don't you remember me?
No, I don't know.
I'm Harry Gilmore. You and me went to Waukegan High School together.
Waukegan High School?
Yeah, don't you remember? I was the one voted most likely to succeed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, got my own cab.
Oh, well, isn't that nice?
Yeah, it certainly is.
You see, no one had figured out how to do a show like I Love Lucy on a soundstage with big, elaborate sets and have a live studio audience. Conventional wisdom was that it could not be done, and certainly not done in such a way that would adhere to fire and health codes. Desi was the one who figured it out, essentially constructing the space and creating, especially constructing the space rather, and creating adjoining sets, particularly of the Ricardo's apartment. And you can see in the picture here from left to right how we've got the Ricardo's bedroom and then their living room and then the kitchen and then Desi's club all in a line like that. That meant those sets could all be standing and the cameras could be wheeled left to right from one to the other for the different scenes, with the audience sitting in bleachers against the back wall of the building. This is still the way that television shows like this are filmed today, and Desi was the one to figure it out. This style of shooting proved to be so successful with audiences that other shows quickly aped the style of the sets, the audience, and the film look. Jack Benny, in particular, even began filming his show at Desilu Studios to ensure that his show would now have that same look and feel.
Mr. Benny?
Yes?
Mr. Benny, we're from the Department of Internal Revenue.
What happened?
You fainted.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry, but when you gentlemen said you were from the Department of Internal Revenue, everything went black.
Well, you're not the first.
While Desi was handling the nitty-gritty of the production, Lucy was handling the artistic side of the show, working with the writers in developing her new character, which would be equal parts Chaplin's sympathetic tramp, close friend Keaton's physicality and precision with props, and Harpo Marx's mischievous schemer. And I Love Lucy wasn't the only Desilu show that Lucy was artistically involved in. Years as Queen of the Bees gave her a solid idea of entertainment trends and what audiences wanted. And it would be up to Lucy to frequently approve original concepts for television shows, often shows that no one else wanted or saw the potential in, that would prove to be great successes and be produced by Desilu, with Lucy herself personally championing such shows as The Untouchables, Mission Impossible, and Star Trek. Now, not all of the success rests on Lucy and Desi's shoulders. I mean, what would I Love Lucy be without Fred and Ethel? William Frawley played Fred. He was very much like his character in real life. He was born in 1887 in Burlington, Iowa, and was a vaudeville performer and film actor, beginning all the way back in silent pictures and appearing in more than 100 movies. You may recognize him besides I Love Lucy for his roles in My Three Sons and Miracle on 34th Street. He was 64 when he started work on I Love Lucy. The network was initially hesitant to cast Frawley because of Frawley's legendary drinking and unreliability. But Frawley, whose career was faltering, was desperate for the part. And Desi and Lucy wanted him badly, so Desi told Frawley flat out that if he was ever drunk or late for a recording, he'd be replaced. And Frawley never was. In fact, the only time he would miss work was if the Yankees were in the World Series, a stipulation he had added to his contract. As a result, Fred doesn't appear in 2 episodes of I Love Lucy because the Yankees were in the series. William was nominated for 5 consecutive Best Supporting Actor Emmys for his work. Vivian Vance plays Ethel. Vivian was born in 1909 in Kansas and was primarily a Broadway actress. She was suggested for the role by I Love Lucy director Mark Daniels, but Lucy wanted her close friend B. Bernadette, who was playing Blanche on the George Burns and Gracie Allen show, to take the part. But since she was busy with that other show, B ultimately turned it down, and Vance won the role and, in 1953, won the first ever Best Supporting Actress Emmy Award. Like Lucy and Desi, Bill and Vivian had exceptional on-screen chemistry and near-perfect comic timing.
Big Latin lover, you. Ah, you sweet, handsome man, you.
You gorgeous, exciting woman, you. I pass.
Yes, you sit down too, baby.
Well, you sit down on my lap. You'll be more comfortable.
All right.
You sit there, darling. This chair's more comfortable.
Oh, but if it's so comfortable, I want you to have it.
Ethel, the one thing that I ask you, will you please? I said sit down!
Sadly, Vivian and Frawley absolutely hated each other behind the scenes. Vance was 22 years Frawley's junior and resented that he had been cast to play her husband. The feud between them supposedly began when he overheard her saying that he ought to be playing her father instead. Still, the characters were so successful and beloved that when I Love Lucy ended, Lucy and Desi offered the pair the chance to star in a Fred and Ethel spinoff. Frawley eagerly accepted, but Vance declined, refusing to work with Frawley ever again. After 2 years on the air, I Love Lucy was enjoying phenomenal success. It was the #1 show on TV, with an unheard of 68% of the television audience tuning in week after week. To put that into some context, 2018's top show, The Big Bang Theory, was only watched by 11% of the television audience. To keep things going, CBS gave Desi and Lucy a new $8 million contract, the most that had ever been paid for a TV show at that time and for many years to come. The success is tied to everything we've talked about up until now, as well as for the fact that the Ricardos' lives so perfectly paralleled their audiences in the growing middle class, creating a real sense of camaraderie between viewers and the Ricardos. As international travel finally became affordable for regular Americans, the Ricardos would go on vacation. As people began to flock to the suburbs, so too did the Ricardos. And as the baby boom was in full swing, Lucy got pregnant. At a time when married characters still slept in twin beds and the word pregnant wasn't allowed to be spoken on television. In fact, at that time, no woman had ever been allowed to appear pregnant on television. But Lucy had the power and the popularity to push for what she felt was an important storyline. And while the word pregnant was still not allowed, they say in expecting instead. The episode where Lucy reveals her pregnancy to Ricky is still one of the most popular and moving episodes of the series. The storyline is one of early television's first true phenomena. Broadway productions and offices had televisions backstage waiting for Lucy to give birth. More people, 44 million, watched the birth episode than any other television program at that point. The following day, in real life, Lucille Ball had her baby the same day that episode aired. And the following day, Dwight D. Eisenhower was inaugurated president, but he had to share the front page with Lucy and her baby. People were so excited about Lucy's baby that they sent in a warehouse full of cards and presents. It was a testament to Lucy's popularity and to her place in Americans' hearts. But that popularity would be tested soon after by the House Un-American Activities Committee. A Hollywood writer named Rena Vale told HUAC that she'd attended a new members class for communists at Lucy's home. Soon it was discovered that Lucy had registered as a communist in 1936 and in 1938, mostly as a favor to her socialist grandfather. Lots of stars and writers and directors were blacklisted, refused work for things like this, and Lucy was scared. No one was sure what CBS would do, but the audience rallied to Lucy's side. Before taping that week's new episode, a nervous Desi Arnaz took the stage and told the audience about Lucy and her grandfather. He said, "The only thing that's red about Lucy is her hair, and even that's not legitimate." The audience cheered, and ultimately, Lucy escaped with her career intact. The show would more or less maintain its popularity through its end in 1957. Due to audience demand, the cast would reunite for a series of specials titled The Lucy Desi Comedy Hour until 1960. By that time, Lucy and Desi's marriage had finally and seriously eroded. Desi had never stopped drinking and womanizing, and in 1960, he and Lucy would divorce. They would, however, remain friends for the rest of their lives. Desi sold his shares of Desilu to Lucy, making her the first female head of a television studio. After 2 years, though, Desilu was struggling and only producing a single hit with The Untouchables. Lucy decided to return to television for a single year as a sort of stopgap, using that new series as a carrot to get CBS to invest in other Desilu productions. But CBS, believe it or not, was hesitant at first, fearing that Lucy would never be able to match I Love Lucy or to succeed without Arnez by her side. But they were ultimately too curious and took her up on the offer. For her part, Lucy had two conditions: that the show would air in her old Monday night I Love Lucy time slot, and that Vivian Vance could once again be her co-star. Vivian demanded more money and that her character be called Vivian, as she hated being called Ethel on the street. The show would focus on the antics of two divorcees living together with their children and was called The Lucy Show.
Viv, huh? Do you think we could squeeze out through the top? We might not have to. In a few minutes, we'll be able to float out. Oh, Lucy. Hey, girl. What? Didn't you say that cover was held on by screws? Yeah. Well, we're going to have to unscrew it.
We're going to have to unscrew it?
Yeah.
We can't. We haven't got a screwdriver.
I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Well, now you tell me. The people who designed this thing would prepare for an emergency exit.
I doubt it that an emergency like this crops up very often.
The show, despite only being intended to last for a year, was so popular with critics and audiences that it ended up lasting 6 years. But there would be many changes in that time. Most of the first season supporting cast, including Dick Martin, were written out for the show's second season. Lucy's daughter in the show would also soon be written out, and Vivian Vance would leave soon after. Last but not least, Gail Gordon was added to the show as Mr. Mooney, the president of the bank managing Lucy's trust, as a new straight man / antagonist for the show.
Now, Mrs. Carmichael, you... Joe! Don't!
Why did you do that?
Because we are not leaving this room until you give me time to tell you my side of the story.
We are not leaving this room until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
What do you mean by that?
We're locked in.
We're not.
We are.
But that's impossible.
Oh, no, it isn't. It's a time lock. It works automatically.
Oh, dear.
Oh.
Somebody must have the combination. Somebody on the outside must know how to open it.
Oh, of course. Why didn't I think of it? Somebody can open it from the outside.
Well, of course. Who has the combination?
I have.
Boy, talk about bad planning.
The show would eventually change around so that now Lucy would work for Mr. Mooney, and eventually the whole cast of characters would move from a small town to California, at which point Lucy's son was also written out of the show. Even though much of the show was broadcast in black and white, it was filmed beginning with the second season in color, because Lucy realized she'd be able to demand a better price in syndication for a color show. Once Lucy felt she had enough episodes for syndication, she ended the series, and then immediately started a new one the following year with Here's Lucy, a show which co-starred her real-life children. Like I Love Lucy and The Lucy Show, it would air for 6 years on CBS, but to diminishing returns.
Pizza! Pizza! You read the letter, didn't you?
Don't call us, we'll call you. Now then, I wonder which way Mom's going to be coming down, from the living room or the stairway.
Craig, I think it's very sneaky you making a movie about Mother without warning her. You know, no woman looks her best in the morning.
Kim, this isn't a woman, it's Mom. And she always looks beautiful.
What? Oh, good morning, Champ.
Good morning.
You know you're up, baby. Good morning, Craig. Mustn't wear your cap in the house, dear.
A final series entitled Life with Lucy, about Lucy as a grandmother, would only last 2 months. Throughout her life, Lucy was a bit of a workaholic, but she still made time with her family. After all, a big part of the thinking behind Here's Lucy was that it would allow her to spend more time with her children. In the 1960s, she met Borscht Belt comedian Gary Morton, with whom she would have a 30-year marriage. When they met, Gary had never seen an episode of I Love Lucy, and Lucy loved that about him. Desi, who had also remarried, died at the age of 69 in 1986 of lung cancer due to his longtime smoking habit. In 1989, Lucy, then 77, would die of heart complications, also brought on by smoking. Lucy and Desi both received numerous honors throughout and after their lives. I Love Lucy has aired continuously on television since the 1950s, gaining new fans with each passing generation. And TV Guide estimates that Lucy's face has been seen by more people than the face of any other person who has ever lived, and it has entertained every person who's seen her. Thank you for joining me for this look at the life and career of Lucille Ball. I would like to invite you, if you enjoyed the presentation, to please comment on this video, like this video, and subscribe to the Movie Man Eric YouTube channel. You can also email me at eric@northmetrotv.com if you would like to join my mailing list and be informed of new classes as they come up. I'll be continuing to post at least mini classes here on the Movie Man Eric YouTube channel, and hopefully before very long, we'll be seeing each other again in person. Until then, please stay safe.